Hi, my name is Allie. Welcome to my channel where we chat about all things bookish. Today I'm going through all the books that I read in 2024 that feature trans characters. Let's get into it. The first one I have is The Bruising of Qilwa by Naseem and Jamnia. This is a fantasy book that features a non-binary refugee healer that does blood magic in a place where blood magic is not supposed to be used. It is a Persian-inspired world and I really enjoyed it. The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nghi is a very exquisite fantasy novella featuring a non-binary cleric named Qi, whose job is to go around the country and collect stories. This is the first book in a series of standalones that can be read in any order. I think there's about 5 with more to come, and every single one of these novellas just gives off the vibes of folk tales and legends. I love them so deeply. Next up is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is a cozy fantasy novella featuring a non-binary tea monk named Dex. Like I said, it's very cozy, but there is a side of existentialism talking about who we are, why we're on this world, and what our purpose in life is. There is a second book. I haven't read it yet, but I have heard wonderful things about that second book, and I really enjoyed this one. Guardian Guest by Karryn Nagel is a YA or middle grade fantasy book that features a lot of positive masculinity. The whole premise of this book is that these two strangers find a baby gargoyle one day and decide that they're going to basically take care of this baby gargoyle until they find where it's supposed to be, who it belongs to, how to take care of it, and things like that. There's a lot of wonderful queer representation in this book and the next book, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a trilogy, so there's a third book coming. Meanwhile, Elsewhere is an anthology of science fiction and fantasy books written by transgender writers. There's a whole bunch of stories in this one. I read it last year for the Trans Rights Readathon. Honestly, it wasn't really my cup of tea. There was just a lot of stories that I just didn't vibe with in there, but that's the great thing about reading, is that it's very subjective. And so I highly recommend to at least go check it out, because there were some stories in there that I really enjoyed, and I'm sure there's some stories in here that you would also enjoy. The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill is a graphic novel with a cast of wonderfully queer characters. There's also some disability representation, and of course we have this care and taking of tea dragons. While there's not a specifically named trans character in this book or the other two that follow, the author is non-binary, so I wanted to include it on this list. Light from Uncommon Stars by Ryka Aoki is such a cool book. So we have a deal with the devil going on. Selling souls to the devil as well. A trans teen that's run away from home and enters a violin competition after finding a mentor, and aliens running a donut shop. And if you're thinking to yourself, Allie, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't go together, you wouldn't be able to fit all 3 of those topics in a book and it go well together. Well, that's what I also thought before I read this book, but Ryka Aoki does such an amazing job of folding these stories into each other and giving us such a wonderfully trans and sapphic story. I love it so much. The Devourer by Alison Ames is a YA sapphic pirate fantasy, and there are some transgender and non-binary people aboard the ship. House of Frank by Synclaire is such a beautifully wonderful, cozy story about grief and love. You will sob. I at least sobbed. I think everyone who reads this book cries at least a little bit. And there is a very prominent trans side character in this book. Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas is trans and a Killian. Our main character kind of brings this boy back from the dead. He develops a crush on him. It's so fun. It's so wonderfully queer. And there's a second book coming out this year, and I cannot wait to read it. Feathers of Dawn by Jess Galaxie features a non-binary dragon. It is very cozy adjacent and is set in a very high fantasy world. The Winter Night by Jess Battis is an urban Arthurian legend that is set in modern day Vancouver. If you love Arthurian legends, you should read this book, because the author themselves has some degree in Arthurian legends. They are so knowledgeable on this topic. And honestly, I'm not very knowledgeable on Arthurian legends, and I had a great time with it. So I can imagine that if you are knowledgeable about Arthurian legends, you would have even more of a great time with this book. We have lots of queer representation. One of our main characters is autistic, and the other main character is an older woman. I think she's in her 30s, so Foul Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong is about an unkillable assassin that lives in historic Shanghai. While our female main character, the unkillable assassin herself, is not transgender, there is another story within the story, and one of those characters who is very prominent in the story is transgender. Brooms by Jasmine and DuVall is a graphic novel about broom racing. We have non-binary and trans representation. We also have deaf representation, sign language in the book, and it is also about racial equity and racial justice. It was such a wonderful graphic novel. Cannot recommend this book enough. Blood of the Root by LaDarrion is a YA fantasy book that is set at an HBCU for magic in the South. While there is no transgender main character, one of these prominent side characters is non-binary. Running Close to the Wind by Alexandra Rowland is the most unserious book I have ever read. Oh my gosh, the audiobook is absolutely amazing, and one of our main characters is our favorite effervescent non-binary pirate captain named Tev. Like I said, it is just the most unserious book. We have so much queer pirating going on, and I love it so much. Those are all the books in 2024 that I read that have trans main characters or very prominent side characters. Let me know if you've read any of these. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you for our next chat.